Thank you very much, Minister Maru, for your talk and, of course, your introduction. Thank you for inviting me to come and join you here today. Let me firstly acknowledge the presence of the other ministers of state, governors of provinces, members of parliament, heads of government departments and agencies, NGO representatives, all our friends from the different missions who are here in PNG, and of course our development partners. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to each and every one of you. I also want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who have expressed their prayers and thoughts for our people who have been affected by the earthquake disaster in a few of our provinces in our country. And I appreciate the efforts that have been made throughout the country by various communities and groups, helping the relief efforts that are taking place as we speak today. But I also welcome you to this summit, which is, again, an opportunity for us to deliver a much stronger economy that will secure the future of our country, deliver growth, deliver prosperity, so that our living standards of our people can continue to improve. And I want to thank the National Planning Minister and his officials for the excellent work that they've done to bring us here together this day. I also want to thank the Governor of Morobe and his provincial government, the Lord Mayor, the other sponsors of this event, the European Union, the UNDP, CMIC, Institute of National Affairs, and all our corporate sponsors for your contribution to this summit. The theme is a very relevant one, securing our future through inclusive growth. And this relates directly to our thoughts that were set by our leaders in the second Alotau Accord before the formation of our government. And this also corresponds quite well with some of the themes that have been pursued regionally, particularly to the APEC agenda. So I know that the contributions that you will make towards the development of the medium-term development plan for next 5 years is something that we can launch in June and try and ensure that it is entrenched in our government structures and service delivery mechanisms, so that we can continue again to ensure that there is inclusiveness in our development agenda for our country. In doing so, let's keep in mind the objectives of this strategy. That means that we need to put practical, affordable, and substantial policies. We need to ensure that it is positive, and we have to be confident that the outlook for our country over the next 5 years is also positive. We must do it with open mind. As I have always stated, in our country, we have had many governments come and go. Last 6 years, and this is our 7th year in government, I have tried my best to ensure that there is stability in policy. There is predictability in policy. And that policy is adapted and making sure that people understand that this is the path that we are all going to go together for years to come. So in many ways, this historic event, bringing together many of our sectors of government, particularly the provincial governments and private sector, is something that is going to ensure that we continue to build on the visions of the Alotau II Accord. We need to embrace it so that we ensure that it is owned by everyone. No country can be developed by government alone. And the passionate speech that was made by our planning minister and, of course, our governor and our evangelist is something that is very much appreciated, and the visions that have been entrenched and encouraged by all our leaders. I know that you will see in detail the second Alatau Accord. That accord developed from the achievements of the first Alatau Accord, where we set out priorities for a 5-year term. And I can assure you that at the end of the 5-year term, when we made an assessment, we have achieved over 90% of what we have set out to do. And that is the accord that has been entrenched into the budget strategies and implementation of our national budgets and programs over the 5 years since Alatau Accord number 1. We have to be careful about our spending. It has to be in line with the revenues that we have. We've seen our public service, again, being bloated and inefficient. Continues to cost well over 40% of our entire budget. No country can afford that. We need to ensure that we are continuously increasing the revenue base of our country. The taxes that we are collecting from very few taxpayers. In fact, just over 200,000 people, less than 300,000 taxpayers registered in the country. No country can survive on that base. As they say, we are milking the same cow until such time the milk will run out. So we just need to ensure that we expand the economic base of our country so every citizen, every business participates in the well-being of the coffers of the nation. We have to maintain our core policies, which includes free education. When you talk about empowering someone, education is one of those tools that empowers a citizen. There are critics out there who always tell you that free education will never work. I was fortunate to be in New Ireland over the weekend, and New Ireland was one of the first provinces who has introduced free education as a provincial agenda, followed by Inga. The two leading provinces in the country that continuously score well above national average in education is those two provinces. 50% of the students in their classes are girls, empowering girls for the first time. They have doubled the number of kids who are in classes, meaning that almost half the kids were not attending school previously. I always say that each child has a right to be educated in their own country. That is why we can never do away with free education. It will continue to be strengthened. Of course, there are challenges. Of course, there are challenges. It doesn't mean that we go and overhaul the entire education system so we make it only for the privileged few. Many of us Papua New Guineans who are in this room today, many of us grew up in the village, got educated through a selective process where the dropout system was always thought it was normal. Many of you know that some of our classmates are still back at the village. But we were lucky enough to get through for some reason. That doesn't mean that we consider ourselves privileged. We have to make sure that opportunity is available to every child that has got an opportunity. The future of our country depends on those 2 million children who are at school today. It is important we build on it, build infrastructure, build capacity, train teachers, making sure that they're teaching the right subjects. That is the challenge we have. Why has this challenge has been consistently in our education system over the past 10 years? Well, we make stupid decisions along the way, such as rearranging the entire education teacher training program so that we can have another university in the country. And we forget to teach the teachers the core subjects that they need to teach our children. That is why we have to go back to the basics, making sure that our teachers' colleges have been funded properly. Our University of Goroka focuses on education as the core faculty that they have to focus on. That is how we are going to improve the quality of teaching and teachers in the country. Likewise, in terms of funding, we have been funding the healthcare program in the country for the last 5 years. There are some remarkable improvements. Sometimes people forget that we have been independent for 43 years. Unlike many other countries in the world, when the colonial administration left them very capable infrastructure and a trained public service, they were able to manage their own affairs quite well. When we compare ourselves with countries around the region like Fiji, even Australia for that instance, even New Zealand for that instance, Singapore or even Malaysia, they were managed for quite a long time by their colonial administrators, unlike Papua New Guinea. If you're a student of history, you will note that after the Second World War, the United Kingdom and their part allies gave the administration of Papua New Guinea to Australia. Well, Australia was still trying to rule itself and make sure that it became a nation in its own right. It was developing its own infrastructure. So sending a few administrators up here once in a while is not building a country. So don't forget that we have come a long way in 43 years. Don't forget. Sometimes we lose sight of these things and we talk ourselves down. And you feel that you are not able to achieve things. That is not the point. The point is you and I are here today, chosen among millions and thousands to provide that leadership and provide opportunity for the rest of our citizens. That is the mindset that we must have. Sometimes it's easy to point fingers and for political convenience, we continuously criticize ourselves. But our government welcomes constructive criticism, meaning that we do not have the answers for everything. We are open-minded about all issues. If there's a better way to do something, we will do it together with you. That is why we are here today. And much of the problems that we have got today is not anybody else's doing. It is our own doing. When we talk about our country being resource-rich, that we have got so many resources, why are we still so poor? Well, you look at each resource development agreements that have been signed before. It's not to say that we're trying to blame some of our own leaders in the past. They were not educated enough to understand. So they signed agreements that were not favorable to our country. Parking all this export revenue overseas, not bringing foreign currency back into the country, giving them tax concessions that were more than favorable. In fact, comparative to many other parts of the world, it is very favorable. Whereas these companies are making billions and billions of kina, Papua New Guinea is getting a very, very little for its resources. That is why our government has deliberately gone back and now reviewing each agreement. Reviewing each agreement that we have signed. Our intention is not to try and tear up the agreement. We want a fairer share for our people. That's all we want. Fairer share. When you look at our country since independence, our life expectancy has increased. Many of us are living beyond 62, 65 years of age, from what used to be about 50 years of age. And our population has tripled since independence. But our economy has only doubled since independence. Doubled more than close to doubling in the last 6 or 7 years, because we've been driving growth as an agenda. We were stagnant for quite a while. And when you look at some of the reports, I think it is the World Bank that did a report recently, and I urge many of you landed friends who are here to read that report, about the lost decade between 2002 to 2012, where we simply lost our way. Despite highest revenues in the country, despite surplus budgets in the country, despite record amounts of money in trust accounts, we simply built nothing. We did not build one single hospital. We did not build one new road. We did not build even one new bridge in the country. The 8 billion Canadian trust funds were just squandered. We all know that. We lived through that. This is what we must not do again. Since taking government in 2011, we've gone through some strong challenges. We have to endure the 8 months of drought, which affected all our exports. We've endured global financial crisis, which squeezed the availability of credit right throughout the financial community. And today we experience a record-breaking disaster in the earthquakes that we are experiencing, affecting our exports and revenue base in the country. But despite all those, we will continue to endure. We'll make sure that we continue to maintain the confidence of our people and making sure the services are continued to be delivered. And that is the challenge that we have. And this is why when Minister for Planning is talking about broadening our economy base, tourism, agriculture, of course, fisheries and forestry. And many of you know, recently in fisheries, we have entered into a rebate structure, bringing in honest brokers in the industry, so that we can be able to increase our own take on this multi-billion Kenya industry that has been, again, squandered from us. And the rebate system is working. I know Lae owns about 3 factories of tuna. People will expect in January the 1st to shut it down, but they're still continuing. They're still buying license fees at the rates that we want, and we will encourage them to manufacture them in our factories so that we create jobs for our people. We give them income in their pockets and making sure that our SMEs continue to participate in that industry as well. That is a line that we have to take. Similarly, we have made a very bold statement 5 years ago that we will stop round log exports by 2020. That is to encourage downstream processing. We are not going to allow our round logs to get on the ships and go and create jobs in China, create jobs in Thailand. We want to create jobs here. When you have a population that has been tripling every 40 years, we have a serious problem on our hand. Our economy is not growing fast enough to maintain the population growth. That's as simple as that. We need to work together, making sure that all the resources that we have are put to the greatest benefit for our people. In agriculture, we are doing the same. And we are a good example that the partnerships that we are encouraging, both from the provinces and the national government, partnerships in agriculture, making sure that we try and reduce imports in our country. We must have food security. We must be able to feed our own people. You know, when I was criticized when we had the 8-month-long drought, why didn't I go and ask foreign partners and others to come and help us feed our people? Firstly, we have to stand on our own. We cannot continuously go out and beg people to come and look after us. This is our country. We have to learn to look after our own family. That is why agriculture for food security is very important. Government will continue to partner businesses, and both small and large, in establishing large-scale agricultural projects right throughout the country. More importantly, blockholder that is targeted at individual families. The success of the oil palm industry in New Britain and of course, particularly more so in West New Britain, is a clear example of what can be achieved. There is an economy that is sustaining itself because of the block ownership of all the oil palm industry in that country. while there is a New Britain oil palm putting the basis on which the refineries and the mills can operate, the blockholder scheme is working to bring in the standard of living for all our small farmers throughout that particular province. This can be replicated right across the country in cocoa, copra, in coffee. This is more important because of our land tenure system. Because all our land is owned by customary titles and customary ownership. We cannot simply go in there and one individual getting thousands of hectares. So every family, every village getting into block ownership gives every individual the right to participate. And that is why we are encouraging voluntary customary land restoration program, identifying the rights of individuals in a clan or a tribe so that they can participate meaningfully in the economy. So I know that you've got a lot of work to do ahead of yourself over the next 2 days. So I will not bore you with a long speech. But consistency is very important. When we talk today, about particularly growing an inclusive economy, the health and education. Education is a tool for young kids. Health enables productivity to increase in the population. Infrastructure enables the economy to grow and access to markets. Those are the key issues that we have been focusing. Now, I know that our law and order is also a top priority, but it must be also a community responsibility. No investor will come into any community if they know that there's a law and order issue. When you have no investor, there is no employment opportunity or no income opportunity. So it is a vicious cycle. One depends on the other, meaning that we need to work together. When you know that someone is doing the wrong thing in our country, stand up. When you know that someone is doing things that are not going to be for the best interest of our family, our communities, stand up. We have to highlight this clearly so that the police can be able to address those issues. Judiciary can be able to address those issues. Many of you know that we've got APEC coming up in 2018. I know there are people who think that we are spending billions and billions of kina. Sometimes, I don't mind getting into debates with anybody, but please, let's talk some facts. And we don't mind those kind of criticism. But the facts are very clear. We are very fortunate to be in an economic community of 21 member countries. Out of close to 200 countries around the world, these 21 member countries control almost 50% of the global trade, 50% of the global GDP. 21 economies controlling half the world's economic activity. Wouldn't you want to be part of that community? Wouldn't you want your population and your economy to participate in that community? This is an opportunity, big opportunity for Papua New Guinea. When we are building undersea cabling from Australia to PNG, expanding on our own NBN program right throughout the country, that gives you access to internet so that you can be able to trade with these countries very freely and, of course, the opportunities to take advantage of that. When we are expanding our power generation right throughout the country. And talking about power generation, I know Lei has been out of power for quite some time. And let me tell you what it's not because you are the only ones that are frustrated, but I can tell you, we are equally frustrated as well. Why the management was incapable of addressing these issues. Now we find out that, there's been some deliberate sabotaging going on. How could someone in his right thinking mind allow their own citizens and their own families to live in a very uncomfortable and in a blackout situation when the powers is available, the capacity is there to deliver? This is the sort of mindset we need to, do away with. If you have grievance against anyone, if you need to be addressing an issue that concerns an industrial matter, you bring it up and we will sit down and discuss it. But not putting the switch off and saying that we've got a technical problem. Similarly, in telecommunication. At one stage, we used to control 100% of the market. Today, we have allowed a private sector monopoly to take place. So once we are building the infrastructure around it, we are trying to create competition, reduce price so that you can have access to that technology. Telecom is rolling out 4G, so many of you should support our local companies. If we cannot support our local companies, how are they going to grow? So these are just examples of the mindset that we have to do away with so that we can be able to make sure that our citizens have equal opportunity like anyone else around the world in enjoying the best infrastructure that we can build. We are building hospitals as we speak today in Hagen, and we've been building hospitals in Vanimo, Popondetta. Every year we are trying to build a new hospital in every district right throughout the country. Every year we are trying to build a new road to an internationally acceptable standard. And I know that our commitment to build the road from the second stage of the road all the way to Najab, I can assure you that this will commence this year. We will finish that road by this term. I know I had a few arguments with many of you when I decided to cement Ley City in 2011. I think, don't forget where we are today from where we were in 2010-11. We have to build infrastructure to the highest standards so they last longer and serve us longer. JICA, through their assistance, will be building the new airport, extending a new airport and building a new terminal at Nazab that will be equivalent or even better than Port Moresby. Better than Port Moresby. This will, of course, generate more business activity in the city of Ley, and that will benefit not only Morobe province, but the rest of the country. And we have to start utilizing the new port. It's been sitting idle for 2 years. We've spent a lot of money building it, and we are repaying that loan. If we do not make money, how can we continue? We have to get money from other areas to repay that loan. We have to utilize the infrastructure that we are building right across the country. We are not just focusing on Port Moresby, unlike everybody that is thinking that we are. In the last 5 years, we've spent close to 5.5 billion kina direct funding to the districts and the provinces. We have spent 3.5 billion kina for free education throughout the country. Every year we spend 2 billion kina on funding the national health plan for the nation in the last 5 years, 10 billion kina altogether. So we are spending money in the right sectors. We just need to get our people to manage it well and deliver the services. Finally, it only leaves me to thank every one of you for making time to be here today. Sorry about the long speeches. We have to bore you through today, but let me again thank Minister Maru. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this summit. I hope the summit will give us a constructive and good opportunity to develop a medium-term plan for the next 5 years. We will announce it in June, and we will ensure that we all take ownership of it and develop our country. Thank you very much, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us once more thank the Honorable Prime Minister for giving us a firm footing for the consultative process. Let's all give him another round of applause. Right, the Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Minister have graciously agreed to 1 or 2 questions before the Prime Minister leaves for a major commitment on an infrastructure project in Ley. So, the floor is open for 1 or 2 questions. All right, if you can have a microphone on that side. I think you Papa grounds of Angela review.
Master of Ceremony, Mr. Victor, thank you for you. Prime Minister, Mr. Peter O'Neill, or Honourable Peter O'Neill, and Mr. Richard Maru, the Honourable Richard Maru, Minister for Industry, and the Government for Morobe, all the dignitaries, political dignitaries, and the dignitaries from the international community, United Nations and other people, organizations in the world who come here because we are part of the world, and departmental secretaries, and all the important people, intellectual people and the learned people of Papua New Guinea and the overseas. Prime Minister, the issue which is in the minds of the business community in this country and giving us sick in the stomach today. And I want to ask this question. You have stated the economic development in this country to solve many other problems in this country, in uprising of population, law and order problem, education problem, health problem, whatever problem in this country, those problems can be well addressed when we are economically powerful. Then we can address those problems. And I fully concur with your assertion on that point. Prime Minister, in as much as we do, many companies in this country are foreign-owned. Majority of them are foreign-owned. Many of them, Papua New Guinea will not take control of our economy in terms of industry. If Papua New Guinea says that, I don't agree. I'm a 100%, or if I could say 1,000% Papua New Guinean. And I can tell you that we're not in control of the economy. We are not. I told Samara one time, I told him, why should you sell rum and sugar to a foreign company? Why should you sell it? You should sell it to the Momase government. You should sell it. If we can't afford it, go to the bank and give us a security so that we can borrow money to pay the shares or pay off the Rango, so one day we will be in control of the economy. And I agree with you, fully agree with you, agriculture is the way forward. Agriculture. If we control the agriculture, we can survive for many, many years. And I think the world, and then if they come down there, you need some agriculture anymore. That's what we call food here. Prime Minister, so I want to ask you, this country is suffering from foreign currency. It is suffering from foreign currency. You fail to address that issue today. Many companies in Papua New Guinea, in Lae, they can't get the money. There's in a long queue. They want to get the foreign currency to do business. Because you want to buy a machine in Australia, you're not going to buy with the Papua New Guinea money. You're going to buy with the Australian money. Same is true for America and elsewhere in the world. You're going to get the currency which is powerfully strong to buy their property and bring it to PNG. And the Papua New Guinea company and the foreign company is suffering. I hear the minister, Musadia, Deputy Prime Minister Musad. I forget him because he's not saying the right thing. He's not living up to his commitment. No, I forget him. He's not living up to his commitment. He's telling the whole wide world, he's saying the Papua New Guinea, we going to have the foreign currency to under that. Foreign currency, one in time. I'm not stupid. So, Prime Minister, I want you to address on the foreign currency. One, Mr. Master of Germany, issue the foreign currency. Two, our debt. To tell Papua New Guineans how much we owe to the International Monetary Fund or whatever fund. Tell the country how much? 20 million? 20 million or 40 million or what? Who the hell is going to pay back that money? In the life of the economic problem. Yeah, but I have to state this point.
Thank you to former Governor Bloyumi. Morobe, good luck question. Firstly, on foreign currency, when you look at the monetary policy of any country, it is not managed by government, but it's managed by all the central banks, because they control the issues around exchange rate, how the inflation influences the economy. Today, when you see the foreign reserves in the central bank today, you will see that it's close to a balance of about 1.45 billion US dollars, which is the reserve that they are keeping there to cover at least 8 or 9 months of import bill. Why are they trying to keep a healthy foreign reserve while we, business community and everybody else, need that money? The view that we are taking, and I think the central governor, governor of the central bank is here, so over the next few days he will make a presentation. So you can ask him the equally hard questions about monetary policy, but in my own mind, I cannot speak for him. He's an independent constitutional officer. So, but in my own mind, I think, you know, if we decide to continuously use up all the foreign reserve, our currency will continuously devalue much faster than what we are thinking. When currency devalues at a faster rate, then inflation goes up. When inflation goes up, then prices of goods will continue to go up, which means the basic foods that our own citizens entirely depend on. This is where, as I said, it's a vicious cycle. If we are not producing enough to replace imports, and we are continuously depending on an imported food bill, we are going to continuously spend money overseas. And that is where the demand for currency is continuously increasing. Now, government has taken some steps to secure funding from our international partners, particularly from the World Bank. They've approved a facility of 300 million US. We are now working together with them to draw down that funds. ADB has done the same thing. They've given us 300 million US, which is another almost 1 billion kina in our own kina terms. And from Credit Suisse, the balance of the money, 190 million, which is now, in fact, as I was coming on the plane, they were finalizing the legal documentation to draw down that. So all in all, you've got about close to 790 million US dollars that is now going to be available in this current financial year. So which will go straight into the central bank in terms of managing our currency so that we can be able to make it available to the commercial banks. Much of that will replace our T-bills. Now, many a times people think that, you know, we are borrowing too much money overseas from Chinese and everyone else. In fact, most borrowings that we are doing in the country is concessional. The only expensive loan that we are getting is what the Treasury normally uses to balance budgets. It's not only in this government, but many governments in the past. Every year they have to get some short-term Treasury bills, which is only for 12 months to balance the budget from central bank. The central bank lends that money to government, and government has to pay an interest to itself through central bank. And of course, that money comes back to declaration of dividend when they make profit back to government. So that is the only expensive loan that we have, and our strategy is to try and get concessional funding from our partners like the World Bank and ADB, which is a very long-term loans, sometimes over 10, 15, 20 years, which gives us breathing space to build our economy. Now, when our economy needs to grow, we need to borrow money, but we are limited by our Fiscal Responsibilities Act. I know people think that we have always breached that, but our Fiscal Responsibility Act says that we cannot borrow money, and in fact, credit must be given to Bart Philemon for introducing that bill. Mainly because he's saying that we can't borrow more money than what we can afford to maintain ourselves. So even though there are many countries around the world who the borrowings are well above 110, 120% of their GDP, we are 30%. In fact, last year we were 31% of our GDP. So we are still well below the 35% debt to GDP ratios that has been restricting governments from extending. So we can afford to pay as long as our economy continues to grow. If you look at the numbers of the GDP from 2011-12, when we took government all the way to now, the economy, GDP is almost double. meaning that our economy is growing. It is not growing at the rate that we all anticipated. You know, when the talk about LNG came about, they thought that we'll be flush with cash. Well, that did not happen because the prices of oil collapsed from $110 per barrel down to $27 in 1 year. So when it was trading below 30, I think 35, that's what the operators of LNG are telling us. If it operates below that, we will not get even one toya out of the exports that we are doing. Only if the prices remain above, we are starting to get revenue coming into our country. That is the agreements that they have signed, and that's where the pricing of our exports on LNG is tied to the price of the oil, just as it is a globally traded commodity. So you know, there are a lot of mix of issues that have been managed on a daily basis, but in terms of foreign currency, I can assure you that by end of this year, we would have additional $790 million US coming into, which translates to close to 2.5, 3 billion kina, which will really generate some support to the shortage that we are experiencing. But sometimes on the other side of the coin, you know, let us also see this as in a positive manner. It forces us to look into promoting agriculture in the country. I'll give you a good example. When 3 years ago or so, when the Ella group came and approached me, that they said, listen, we are importing close to 350 million kina worth of dairy products into our country every year without fail, when we can do our own milk in the country. So I said, I organized a central provincial government, our own national government, put some equity together. They put some equity, and we now develop the dairy product in the country. And that is now half the price. There's no tax relief. It's just equity mobilizations which just enable us to. There is no other support given for that product. We are doing the same thing with Ella in Ella province. We have producing almost 12,000 eggs a day in Ella province, half of which is sold to mothers who are buying it at the gate to sell it to the markets, which are feeding the kids some level of protein in the area. We are doing the same now in Layagam Pogora, where in agriculture, where we are now cultivating a large section where Enga provincial government is an equity participant, national government is a participant, similar model, and we are producing large scales of potatoes, which we are going to now make into chips and export all around the world, and including feeding our own people. So there are similar success stories right across the country, and I think as former governor stated, it's important that when we have industries like Ramu and all this, we just cannot continue to sell. Our country is not going to disappear. It's going to be here for thousands of years. We need to make sure that we continue to build food security for our country, and very good comments from the former governor. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Let's thank the Prime Minister for the articulation because of time, sir. So thank you very much for the clear articulation of the matter. And it is not often that we have a cabinet outreach like this, and it's not often that we get to ask questions. So let me move on to the next question from this side, but keep your questions short and sweet. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for the address. I'll be asking a question in relation to technology. I acknowledge what you said about the internet connection, that is cable. And my question is this. The connection cable that is going to come is going to provide connections to the Papua New Guineans. And that is about connecting people. And my question is this. What is your government planning to utilize that connection? Like, for example, I'm a developer, and I just developed a system, an online advertising system, and launched it last Saturday. But I do not have an avenue to market this product. So how do you, what is your government's approach to market such developers like us, Papua New Guinean developers, for information technology? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and let me thank the young man for his question. And again, let me say this. Our young people are getting more and more into the advancing technologies in this communications sector very, very fast. Developing applications that can be sold through industries right throughout the world. And we as a country need to promote that. One of the things that we are doing as government is, firstly, we are trying to create a nationwide broadband network. We are virtually almost there. We are connecting the Medan cable, which is coming from Guam, all the way up through, following the power lines, all the way up to Hagen and beyond that, trying to connect from the undersea cable that was launched by LNG, which is partly owned by PNG government. So what we are trying to do is connect it all the way from Hides down to Hagen, connect it through all the way down here to Ley. That will give us a guaranteed much better NBN program than what Australia is going to deliver in their program over what they've been trying to do over the past few years. This is, again, one of the strategies, including we've recently given up a contract that is now going to do undersea cabling all the way from Vanuatu to Jayapura to Medan to Ley, connecting into Rabaul and Bougainville and right throughout the country. And with the Australian government, we've signed an agreement now to put an undersea cable from Port Moresby all the way to Sydney. That will give us huge capacity, huge capacities for our young people to access it, which will reduce the cost of telecommunication in the country, meaning that young people can have access to this market quite easily. The Minister for Communication will be announcing a comprehensive strategy. Please read that. In fact, I think he's launching that today with the energy policy down at the summit held by Petroleum and Energy Summit in Port Moresby today. But these are going to give you a comprehensive view of what government is trying to do in this industry for young people right throughout the country. I know Facebook is a tool that everybody uses, but use it for the right purpose. Generate some income out of it, and don't be frustrated about things in life, because it doesn't really help anyone. So let's work together in developing this industry for the good use for our citizens, so that they can particularly use it for commerce and advancing technology. There are very, very young, talented Papua New Guineans out there in this industry that we need to develop and build for the long term of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you will agree with me that the platform has been set for very dynamic and robust discussions in the next 3 days. And we are so grateful to the Prime Minister for giving us his time. And let me now with your permission, we'll now give a token of appreciation to the Prime Minister. These are agricultural products from Morobe, and we proudly produce within Morobe province. So, Honorable Prime Minister. So, with your permission, I'd like to now announce the departure of the Prime Minister to another commitment within the province, and together with his entourage, and we will continue on after the Prime Minister leaves. So if I can ask you all to stand. Thank you, sir.